Okay, welcome back to part 2 of the remodel. In the last episode, we put in windows, put in a new wall.
Talked about plants.
And in this episode, we're going to just kind of finish everything off. What else did we do? Painted, put in a floor, floating shelves, desk build. Now that the windows were installed, it's time to start on the casing. The casing is the wood that goes around the outside of the windows and includes typically a windowsill. We installed a pretty good size 6-inch windowsill because we knew we wanted to have plants and things on there and just a spot for general knickknacks. Once the casing is in place, then it's time to start on the trim. I actually followed a trim tutorial I found on YouTube. I'll try to find it and link it in the description. And I think it's called a craftsman style trim, but it's basically a few different layers. One of them is a 6-inch riser with some crown molding around the top. And I really like the look of this. As you can see, we're gonna paint all of it, so it doesn't really matter what it looks like at this stage, so long as all the nail holes are filled and everything is sanded down and nice and smooth. Then I masked off the window so I didn't get any paint on it and hit it with some primer, and I actually kept the masking on the window for the duration of this painting process because I end up using a paint sprayer to do most of that wall anyway. After the windows were in, we had to paint.
Yes.
Well, I'll explain it. I sprayed most of the room.
Yeah.
And you picked out this color.
Terracotta, my fave.
As I mentioned before, I did the majority of this room using a paint sprayer, which I didn't show because obviously I don't want to get my camera completely covered in paint. But I basically just went crazy. I masked off anything I didn't want paint on, and I just sprayed this whole room white. Actually, it's a little bit of an off-white, which you'll see we used on 3 of the walls, and then added an accent wall on that far side. The only other thing we really had to roll was the ceiling. I think it's smart to use a ceiling white. It's just a really pure white, and it really kind of brings out the light in the room. And whenever you have a painting project, try and see what your friends are up to. It always goes smoother with a few extra hands. As you can see, I'm just cutting in this accent wall. If you don't feel comfortable cutting in with a paintbrush, you can always tape this section off. I think there are a few spots around the door where we did use a little bit of painter's tape. That just helps with any kind of brush marks that you might miss. And one of the secrets I use to clean up that cutting in section, if it's not quite perfect, sometimes I'll run a bead of white caulk along that seam. It just seems to clean things up and give it like a nice sharp look. Once the painting was complete, I actually threw some new hardware on the door because that was getting kind of old, and it's black to match the rest of the hardware in the office. One big thing here. If you're gonna even if you're gonna roll the paint on, do it before you put the floor in, or else you're gonna get paint all over the floor and it's hard to get up.
Especially if you're me.
Especially if you're Allie. We ended up going with a Pergo laminate floating floor for this. It's the snap together stuff that you see a lot of people using, and it's come really far these days. It's really high quality stuff. You'll see we do have a concrete floor in here, so I went with a thick, high quality underlayment just so that transfer of hot and cold doesn't come through too much. This is a pretty simple process. There's tons of tutorials out there, but it's essentially you start in one corner on one side of the room and then just work your way towards the door. I will say one of the tools that came in super handy for this was a flush cutting saw. That's just a plunge cut saw, and it made it really easy to go around all those posts and the little brackets for the sliding doors of the closet. You can see I kind of just mark it with a pencil, take it to the saw, cut that section out, and then snap it in place. There are also 2 other tools I would recommend getting. One of them, I can't remember the name of it, but it's always in the section of either Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever you get your flooring, and it's basically just a flat piece of metal that you can grab one side of the laminate pieces with, hit it with a hammer, and snap it in place when you get close to the walls. The other is a plastic block that you just use on one end to tap the pieces into place. This just ensures that you don't damage the laminate flooring with your hammer or mallet or whatever you choose to use.
So we wanted a big giant desk that we could both sit at.
Let me think. I just wrote that down. I just wrote down we wanted a big giant desk we could sit at as like a note. So maybe you could say like something else. One thing I'm not a fan of is big, chunky executive desks that people fill offices with. So I went with a minimalist approach to this desk. The other thing to mention is we've already taken quite a while to renovate this office, so I was kind of getting to the point where I wanted to move on to the next project in my shop. So I ended up just going out and buying some S4S lumber. This just means it's already been planed and jointed, and I bought it in lengths that were pretty darn close to the length of the desk we wanted, and then I just glued them together. This ensured that my glue joints were pretty much already tight, and all I really had to do was just hit it with a sander, and then cut it to length once it was ready to go. I put a quick chamfer around the outside just to lighten up those edges a little bit, and then I started the finishing process of just spraying it with water, raising the grain, sanding in between, and just working my way down through the grits. We ended up going with a satin polyurethane, a water-based polyurethane actually. And this I found, it's a polyacrylic, and it's just a super durable finish I've used on pieces in the past. When it came to finishing off this desk, we actually kind of came to a crossroads. We wanted just simple legs, but we also wanted some kind of storage underneath the desk. So rather than go out and buy metal legs or try to build something metal and sleek and minimalist, we ended up making these sawhorse type things. This is just a quick design I threw together in SketchUp. Just ended up making it out of 1x3 white pine boards, again from Lowe's, and hit it with some white paint. And we actually really like the look. We didn't end up securing these to the desk. We basically just put them in place and put the desk on top of it. This gives us options if we ever wanted to change the desktop or swap them out, and we really like the look. Allie really wanted floating shelves, but I know she is just gonna like load them up with books, and so I had to find a good option for a floating shelf that would span the width of that wall and also be able to hold like
books and plants.
A lot of weight. Because we wanted floating shelves that could handle quite a bit of weight, I ended up going with shepherd brackets. These things are amazing. And basically the idea behind them is I think they're all handmade and they're super durable. But what you do is you cut away the sheetrock, and in my case I had a little bit of foam to cut out too, and you end up mounting these right to the studs. So these metal brackets mount right to the studs, and you just drill holes, and it actually comes with a template and a drill bit if you order it. You drill the holes in the back of your shelves, use the template, drill them out, and then they just slide right onto the wall, and they're super sturdy. You can see I ended up going around with some caulking just to kind of clean things up. Because of the way sheetrock works, your wall's not always straight, so this helps.
So after the shelves were up, we had to put together the futon.
Yep.
Since it was a guest room, and we need to make sure we can still have all of our guests over.
And decorate.
And we were to decorate.
And that was it. Remember how I mentioned that this was a guest room before? Well, we still wanted people to be able to stay here, so we ended up going with this futon. And this thing kind of just breaks down like most futons, but it's a little bit smaller, so it fits the space a little bit better. Once that was installed, it was just a matter of decorating. I installed my computer mount, which I've done a separate video on, and check that out if you're big time into like multiple monitors, supercomputer type stuff. Allie did her thing and just went crazy decorating this place, and I love the way it turned out. All right, well that's it for the office remodel. We hope you liked it. If there's anything we did that you have questions about, leave it in the comments. If there's anything else you'd like to see on the channel, let us know. Subscribe if you're not. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching.